chip stocks under pressure following the announcement of tougher rules on exports to China. The Biden administration expanding its curbs to prevent China, as well as Iran and Russia, from getting the upper hand in AI technology and potentially using it to strengthen their militaries. Joining us now is Stacy Rasgon, who's Bernstein Research Senior Analyst. And Stacy, it's good to see you. I can think of no one better than to help us sort of figure out what this all means. And you were doing that in your note that you put out today in the wake of this being released, trying to figure out what the effect is going to have. Like, what's the bottom line? What do investors need to know?
Yeah, so it looks to me, and again, this is our first early read. This thing was 300 pages long, so we did the best we could. However, it looks to me that most of the current mainstream data center GPUs that are getting sold into China are likely to come underneath a control regime. They're going to be subject to export controls, and likely sales will be curtailed unless and until the company can get a license to ship. And frankly, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. So parts that Nvidia has been shipping, actually, that were sort of workarounds from some of the controls that were put on last year. They brought in products that were specific for the China market that were designed to come in like underneath the control thresholds a year ago. These new regulations kind of close some of those workarounds and loopholes and sort of block off sales of that. So I do think the stuff that Nvidia has been selling into China, as well as frankly even parts from Intel and AMD, like it's not like they're selling any, but if you sort of look at the specifications of those parts, they're not going to sell any into China. Those are going to come under the controlled regime as well.
So, Stacy, let me ask you this. This is what NVIDIA is saying in response to this. Given the demand worldwide for our products, we don't expect a near-term meaningful impact on our financial results. So maybe that gives comfort to some traders, Stacy. But let's say you're an investor, you're listening to this. Should you be concerned about what this is going to mean long-term for NVIDIA?
Well, sure. So you're right. They don't have any near-term impact. And that's because demand is off the charts. And the stuff that they were selling into China was almost the same as what they were selling elsewhere. There were only some few minor tweaks, and so they can redirect that stuff. There's plenty of demand. Their backlogs are very high. But long term, yeah, I mean, look, even the company themselves, NVIDIA's come out and said, like, if this stuff continues, that over the long term, the China TAM will likely be impaired, and I think that is the case. Now, my own opinion, though, is that is going to happen anyway. So let's imagine a scenario where these control thresholds, like they're getting lowered today. Let's say that they were not lowered. Fine. They're never going to raise them, though. They're never, as far as I can tell, the U.S. government is never going to make it easier to ship stuff into China. Best case, these thresholds stay where they are, and the gap over time between what is legal to sell in China versus the rest of the world is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as we go along. And eventually, like even the stuff they're selling today would be non-competitive in any ways. So my own opinion is that the China TAM for this is likely already to have been impaired. The question is it going to happen quickly or slowly? Looks like it's probably happening quicker. Maybe that's a good thing. You can rip the Band-Aid off. And I do believe that over the long term, the overall opportunity is still very large with or without China. But yeah, it's not like it's a positive. It's not.
Well, and we keep talking, Stacy, for a while now about NVIDIA and then like everybody else when it comes to the AI play. Are there any homegrown chip makers in China at all that are coming anywhere close to what NVIDIA is doing or potentially?
Doubtful. I don't think so. This stuff is very difficult. And again, even if they were, some of the other controls that were put in place last year and some of the revisions that were done today make it very difficult for China to develop and have manufactured chips that could be competitive, especially with NVIDIA's highest end. Maybe with the lower end stuff. Our math suggests that NVIDIA's older generation, what they called V100, the Volta part, which was actually introduced in 2017, my math suggests that that particular part of their entire portfolio would be the only one that might drop below the threshold. And I suppose China could buy a lot of those. It may also be plausible that maybe there are some China offerings that are comparable with a part that looks like that. But again, that part is like 6 or 7 years old at this point. In terms of China being competitive or China companies being competitive with NVIDIA state of the art today, I'd be very surprised.
And Stacey, I want to switch gears here a little bit because you also cover Broadcom. I'm looking, Stacy, at VMware today, really getting smacked around. And I saw, I did hear these rumors circulating, well, maybe China tries to hit back at the U.S. by blocking Broadcom's hopes of acquiring VMware. Any intel, any insight? What do you make of these moves you're seeing, Stacy?
I mean, no particular insight. There's some chatter going around today that maybe the Broadcom VMware deal is being caught up, politically in China, and it may get delayed. So that's again, these are just market rumors that are floating around today. It's just possible. I mean, the rumors that were floating around a couple of days ago was that China SAM, or the regulatory body, was about to approve it. So I don't know. We'll see. I do like Broadcom. I love the VMware deal. I really hope they close it. I like Broadcom with or without it. With it though, I think it's a great deal. It's hugely accretive, both to revenues and margins and earnings and free cash flow. Broadcom though, even without it, is a great stock. And if they've got, I mean, it's a cash machine. Margins and free cash flow generation are best in class. They've also got an AI story. Actually, in my coverage, there's only two companies that are seeing real meaningful dollars from AI, is Nvidia and Broadcom. So I like Broadcom as well. And if you'll note today, I think VMware stock is probably down more than Broadcom stock is, and there's a reason for that.
Right, makes sense. One of them has more to lose if the deal doesn't go through, I guess, is the implication. So in the background of all of this, what's going on with China, the back and forth over this deal, is of course earnings season is coming, right? We're going to start to hear from these companies. You've mentioned two of them that you like. What would be sort of the thing that you should say that you're pound the table by going into earnings within your coverage universe? I
mean, our top picks are still Nvidia and Broadcom, but neither of them report for a little while. They're a little later in the earnings cycle.
Right.
This is an overhang that's going to be over Nvidia, but at least we can get some color on this. And like I said, my guess is, at least for the next, for now, at least numbers for Nvidia are likely to continue to go up as this demand rolls out. So I do like Nvidia. I've sort of given you the 1 second pitch on Broadcom. I like Broadcom as well. This is one where their core business last quarter got a little weaker. I mean, their enterprise spending is weak. They're not immune to that. But the AI story is strong. It's actually bridging the gap. So they actually lowered their kind of core business outlook, but the AI piece was enough to bridge it, so they didn't lower numbers. They think the AI story next year is actually stronger than they thought. If you sort of back out what that implies for the core business and the current numbers, the core business assumptions are very, very modest. And then if they actually can close VMware, I think it's hugely accretive, and it's not numbers at all. The stock is relatively inexpensive even without all of that. I like it a lot.
Dr. Stacy Rasgon from Bernstein Research. Thank you, Stacy. Always great to see you.
You bet. My pleasure.